In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how I do splash anodizing. I'm not a professional, this is just the way I've developed doing it. I'm doing this Auto Cocker trilogy for a guy on M. Carter Brown. So first thing I do is take all the parts and degrease them in my ultrasonic cleaner, which has simple green degreaser in it. Then I'm going to take all the parts and I'm going to rinse them off under the sink, rinse off the degreaser. Then I'm going to put them in a lye bath to remove the anodizing that's currently on it, and I'll do that for about 30 minutes. Alright, so I've got all of my parts hanging on some aluminum wire, and I'm going to put them in my lye bath. I'm going to need a little extra length of wire on this one. When I switch to the anodizing process, I'll use titanium and I'll change how I'm holding on to them. This is just to suspend them in the lye. And I will run these in the lye for roughly 30 minutes. If it's warmer outside, you don't have to, or warmer in my house, you don't have to run them as long. 30 minutes seems to work good. So once this starts reacting, I'll show you kind of what it looks like, and then I'll come back and strip them out of there and move on to the next step. So after 5 minutes or so, this is what the reaction looks like. It'll start producing heat and producing pretty toxic gas, so you want to be in a good ventilated area. I might not have rinsed the parts great because there's a little foaming from the degreaser, but that's okay. So I'll be back in 30 minutes when I pull them out. Alright, so after 30 minutes has passed, the previous anodized layer should be completely removed. So I'm going to spray these off with some distilled water. And as you can tell, the part is pretty black now. This will depend on what alloy you're using. Some alloys turn more black than others. This is about average. Most paintball guns are like 60, 61. So once these are fully rinsed, I'm going to rinse off the majority of the lye with just a spray bottle, and then I'm going to dip it in my rinse tank to remove any excess lye that'll be on it. Then I'm going to put it in the de-smut tank, which is hydrochloric acid, and that'll remove that black finish. And then after that, I'm going to put it back in the degreaser because it's important that they're extremely clean. And after that point, I won't touch it with any hands that don't have gloves or use any water that isn't distilled water so you don't get minerals on the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse all these off and then de-smut them. So I've rinsed off my parts, take them out of the lye. Here's a trigger frame, it's kind of gray. We'll de-smut this. Now this happens pretty instantly. You don't have to keep it in there very long. See, it went from gray to silver almost instantly. So that's the de-smut, that's hydrochloric acid. You can leave it in there just for a second, but it doesn't need to be long. And then I'll show you an example of the different alloys. Let's see here. Alright, so most of the parts are all just a kind of dark gray color, and then this drop forward ASA and the bolt pin all the way on the bottom, can't use my hand to point at them, but those are pretty much black. So that's just a difference in alloy. Now they're silver. So you can see that ASA drop forward and that bolt pin on the bottom are still kind of gray. They've lost some of their color, so those are going to have to de-smut for a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and put all these parts in the de-smut, and then we'll do one final degreasing, and then we can move on to anodizing. So I've got all my parts rinsed off again, and I'm going to put them back in the ultrasonic cleaner to to do one final degreasing to make sure they're super clean before we begin the anodizing. So here I have all the parts with the previous anodizing stripped off of it, and they are clean and degreased. So now I'm gonna rack them on some titanium wire and then begin anodizing. So where I like to rack is a place that's not visible because it won't anodize or it won't die in that spot, and then also something that I can make a good electrical connection with that's real tight. So I like to find a hole and I'll bend the wire over, crimp it down to about a little oversize the diameter of the hole so that it stays good. Right here I'm going to go in the ASA. So I made that a little too large, bend it out a little more. This is one of the trickiest parts of anodizing, is trying to make a really good electrical connection to the aluminum. And some parts can be really hard, like that bolt pin that's in this. It's probably going to be very hard to make a good connection to because there's no through holes in it. So for that part I'm going to do something like that. Alright, move on to the next part. So this is my anode tank. It's just a 5-gallon bucket. I've got a copper bus bar, an aluminum cathode. Not aluminum, I'm sorry, lead. So it's hard to fit a whole paintball gun in here because it's only a 5-gallon bucket. It's easy to do parts, but I'm limited on space. So I'm going to start with my biggest part, the body. Put it on the copper bus bar. Then I'll kind of work up to the smaller parts so I can make sure I can work the smaller parts around the bigger parts in the tank. Then I'm going to put my finger in the sulfuric acid, and it'll take all the oxidation, corrosion off of the copper where they're connected to the bus bar, just to make sure I get a good electrical connection. And lots of times not lots of times, I'm not that experienced, but doing a whole gun, I'll have 1 or 2 parts that won't anodize because of a bad connection, which makes the whole process such a pain because then you have to go back and anodize those parts before dyeing the gun. But anyway, so now I'll turn on the power supply and the agitator and start anodizing. Alright, so I've got all my parts in the tank. I'm going to turn on my power supply and I'm going to run it at probably 7 amps for about an hour and a half, maybe 7.2, 7.8, something like that, at 12, 13 volts. So in a little bit, and I'll come back and show you, the parts will start bubbling, and that'll show you that you have a good connection and the process is working. And it releases that the bubbles coming off of there are hydrogen gas. So the wife doesn't like the smell too much. So I created this really simple and cheap fume hood. It's just got a fan in there in reverse sucking up, going through a dryer duct and then out the window, and that pretty much completely gets rid of the smell and the gases. So we're gonna come back and show you reacting. Oh, I gotta plug in my agitator, which will keep bubbles from forming on the surface of the parts. That's just like a fish tank bubbler in the bottom. So I'll come back and show you the reaction and what it looks like. The lighting in here is pretty bad. And then after an hour and 30 minutes, I'll pull them out. So I've got the bubbler turned off and the anodizing's been going on for about 30 minutes now. You can see all the little bubbles coming off of the parts. Try to shine a light in there. It's not really helping at all, but anyway. As you can see, the water was clear. Now it's completely saturated with little tiny bubbles. So we'll let it run for another hour, a little under an hour, and pull them out. Alright, so it's been an hour and a half. I'm going to turn off the power supply. Take my parts out. So I'm going to rinse them down over the bucket with some distilled water, get most of the acid off. Then I'm going to rinse them real well in another bucket and then neutralize them in baking soda to get rid of any acid that still might be left on the part. After anodizing, they'll get slightly gray, a slight gray tinge to them. That's a good sign. It means it's anodized properly. It's kind of hard to notice without a trained eye. So the parts have been rinsed off in a bath of just distilled water to remove any acid. Any remaining acid will get neutralized when it goes into this bath, which is distilled water and baking soda. So I'll move all the parts over to the neutralizing bath. I don't know if you can see that, but there was some fizzing that came out of the inside of the grip frame that's machined out for the trigger internals. So obviously there was some acid in there that didn't get rinsed out. So that's why you do this step. I didn't do this step for a long time, but you can get some streaking and stuff, and after doing this neutralizing step, it's really improved my finishes. So after it's sitting there for a little while, just pretty much a quick rinse. I'm going to then go back into the distilled water. Alright, so now I'm over at the table where I have all of my dyes. And I'm going to spray off the parts with a little distilled water. Then we're going to go in the dye. I have the dye heated to roughly 130, 120 degrees. Put the parts in. The purple, I'm going for a 90s jazz cup kind of theme design. Purple, blue, and silver. Purple, blue, and white. So the splash color will be done first, which is going to be the purple. But that'll all make sense pretty soon. So as you can tell, it pretty much instantly took the dye because it's heated. If you didn't heat the dye, it would take, you know, far longer, 20 minutes before you actually got the color you'd want. So that purple looks pretty good. We'll set these aside. Move on to these next ones. Spray them off a little bit. What I'm doing is spraying the top of the dye to push back any trash that might be floating on the top, because that can stick to your parts. So I just spray the top of the dye before submerging the parts. Alright, last piece in the purple. Here we go. The frames and the bodies on these trilogies are die cast, so sometimes they take color really well, sometimes the silicon content's a little higher, they don't take color as well. But this one seems to be taking color pretty good. Alright, there it is. I call that good. So now I'm going to hang these up, rinse them off, hang them up, let them dry, and then we'll mask over it to get the splash effect. So we'll move on to that step. So here's all the parts dried after dyeing the purple. I just had a fan blowing on them for like an hour or so. I'm going to go ahead and assemble all the parts, put them together as a gun, and then show you how I do the masking. I've got the gun back together, and this is what I use to mask. This is just some cheap nail polish from Walmart. So what I'm going to do is cover the gun in this and drizzle it on, and then when I bleach it, it'll remove everything except for where the purple is underneath of the nail polish. So here I've got the nail polish on the gun, and it's all dry, and I'm going to remove the anode that's not covered with nail polish with bleach. Oh no, I just broke my spray bottle. Alright, so I'll let the bleach sit on there for a little while to remove the anode, then we'll rinse it off and dye it blue. Alright, going in the blue. Blue will probably take a little while longer to take color sometimes. Some colors take easier than others, I'm not sure why. Alright, now we're going to rinse this off, dry it off, and then do the acid wash. Alright, so for the acid wash, I'm going to take a rag that's just soaked with a little bit of bleach, and I'm going to remove the blue anode in certain areas. So I'm going for the Jazz Cup theme loosely, So I'm going to try to remove more from the top and the bottom of the marker than in the center. Alright, so I think I'm happy with that. It's not exactly what I envisioned in my mind, but it'll probably look pretty cool. So I'm gonna rinse this real good and then seal it in nickel acetate. And then we'll remove the mask after sealing it once and then seal it again to seal what is lying underneath the mask. So this is my sealing tank. It's nickel acetate and distilled water, heated to 200 degrees. You can also seal in just boiling water, but in my experience you lose a little bit of color. So we'll let these seal for 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. Then we'll take them out, remove the nail polish, and then seal one more time. So I've got the first part, the first seal done. I'm going to use acetone to remove the nail polish. So as I do this, you'll see the purple come out from underneath. There you go, you can see the purple coming out. I don't know if I'll get some better shots of it. But anyway, this is a time-consuming process removing all that nail polish with acetone. So I'll be back and show you when it's all done, and then we'll seal it for the last time, and then she'll be done. Alright, so here's the paint gun all finished up. Removed all the masking, and then did a final seal. So, turned out pretty nice. About to package it up and get it sent out. So, anyway, that's my process for splash anodizing and acid wash. Hope you enjoyed.